mold exposure?
I think the best, I mean, I have the free version, right? The free version is like, go over to your toilet tank and take the cover off and flip it over and look inside the toilet or underneath the toilet tank. It's kind of like when you leave coffee out for a few days and you start to see a bloom in there. Well, if I see a bloom in a toilet tank, we're talking mold opportunistically is getting in there, and it might be because there's a source nearby, right? So you can pause this episode right now and you can run right over to your toilet tank and flip it over and check it out. That is the free version, because what I started noticing, actually, this is kind of a funny story. I started noticing in all these people's homes that I've been going to that had significant mold problems, like their toilet tanks were a mess, like a disaster. They looked like you wouldn't believe, like like the toilet was 100 years old and it just was completely overgrowing with mold.
You'd see mold on the interior surface of the toilet, or like on the water itself?
So like inside the water tank reservoir, like the tank itself, that's where I would see it.
Wow.
I mean, like disgusting. Like it looked like there was diarrhea of mold in there. Okay.
Wow.
So I started noticing this pattern of all these different homes, like thousands of homes, all that had significant mold issues, all with people complaining of health issues, and like their toilet tanks looked like a mess. So, is it to say that every toilet tank needs to look like a mess if they're not feeling well, if their house might be contributing to that? No, but I started noticing this pattern, and out of that pattern became, hey, check your toilet tank. Let's see what your toilet tanks look like. It's something free you can do right now. If you're renting, you can do it. If you own your home and you can't afford hundreds of bucks right now for proper testing, like you could do that for free, right? And so we always try to come up with a way to make things more accessible. How can people get some, information that might not cost them, so much? But of course, the dust test, like actually seeing what you're breathing using PCR technology, is probably the most accurate test that you can do to really understand what you're being exposed to. And it's all beautifully color coded to tell you, is it 10 times higher than it should be, 100 times, or even 1,000 times? And I think that scientifically can give you a good indicator as to what's going on.
Are certain geographies more vulnerable than others? Like, is somebody who lives in, for example, the desert, like Vegas, at lower risk of having mold exposure in their homes as compared to somebody who lives in a damper climate, like somebody in Seattle?
Yeah, so I would say yes and no. Like yes, when it comes to the mold that can grow from humidity. Like I would expect to see different types of molds in these environments. Aspergillus and Penicillium, many of those different species of Aspergillus and Penicillium, you're going to see them growing they don't require a lot of water content. So you're going to see them growing in humid places like Florida, or even in the Northeast, or, places where maybe it's humid during the summertime. You'll see those start to grow rapidly just because of humidity. You won't see that much in the desert. But you also have, like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Arizona, but they have these like random times where this mold dust, like contaminated dust, just comes in and like sweeps through the like people can't like open their doors and windows during this time, or they're going to get like real, everyone complains of health issues around this time. Everyone's closing doors and putting air purifiers in, almost like how people were freaking out with the the Canadian wildfires. It's just this weird phenomenon that happens where it sweeps through. So you're going to get, I think, different types of issues in different climates. You also have in the desert, people using humidifiers, right? So they're trying to add humidity because, otherwise their lips crack and they have cracked skin, and, it's a nuisance. Well, sometimes people add too much humidity, right? They're trying to make it more comfortable, but because they're not in control of it, they leave the humidifier on, go to the store, come back, and the room is sweating, right? So you see people create issues that way by accident. I think you also have pipe leaks wherever you go, roof leaks wherever you go, right? That's not geographic specific. So you'll have different challenges depending on the geography you're located in. You'll have to build or modify your home with that in mind, in other words. But you're still going to have some level of risk with water intrusion.
Do we know do we have a general percentage of sick or water damaged buildings in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's going to change depending on who you ask. We just did a study at a Change the Air Foundation. We hired Raw Strategic and Industrial Economic, and the number they came up with was 47% of homes.
Whoa.
To me, that is a very conservative number, and it sounds alarming. I think it's actually closer to somewhere around 75 to 80% that are going to have some level of issue. And that's mainly because we haven't been talking about this for a very long time. We've been making a lot of mistakes from a societal standpoint for a very long time. I mean, when you and I grew up, man, I like our parents, our grandparents, they just poured bleach on it. They just painted over it, like, if we're really being honest. So think about how many years of improper remediation and just basically painting over mold has happened throughout the entire country. I mean, you think about this from a perspective of longevity and how many years this has been going on for. That wouldn't surprise me if you told me that 80% of homes had water damage. The largest study ever done in 1994 by John Spangler, I mean, he said that 80% of homes had signs of water damage that he walked into, that he surveyed, and then 50% of those homes had visible mold, right? We know that mold can be invisible too, and behind walls and hidden. So I think you really start to see the numbers, and it's pretty alarming. American Healthy Home Survey 1 and 2 was done by the EPA and HUD as a joint study. They did it first in 2006 and again in 2019. It's a 13-year difference. The prevalence of mold went up across those 13 years for 35 of the 36 species that they test for. So all but one species went up in prevalence. One of them even was in 100% of the homes that they tested in that 2019 update. It's not going in the right direction, right? And if we correlate that with our global health crisis, 60% of the global population dealing with at least one chronic condition, 40% multiple, like that also has been going up and up. As a matter of fact, we have never been sicker than we are today.
Right.
78% of U.S. adults are on prescription medication, right? And that's been increasing over time too. This is why I believe, if we do something about air quality, we should see some things start to correct.
Well, one thing that's confusing to me is that these fungal species probably...
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.